couple words. Commander Hornick's going to explain more of the factual detail of why you guys are here and the case it involves. So with that, I'll turn it over to Supervisor David Van Leuven.
Good afternoon. I'm David Van Leuven. I'm the Bethlehem Town Supervisor, and I appreciate you all taking the time to join us this afternoon. When we undertook the Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative process last year, we worked hard to showcase the great work of our officers, the men and women who work every day, every night, every holiday to make sure that our community is safe and well. The effort focused on our officers and our dispatchers. But today we're presenting the incredible work of another key part of our police department, our detectives and our commanders. These are dedicated officers who never stop investigating and never stop working to find the truth, no matter how hard it is or how long it takes. The town of Bethlehem is grateful for the outstanding work of our police officers, and we are proud of all that they accomplish on our behalf. Thank you, and I'll turn the mic over now to Chief Kuchera.
Thank you, David, and thank you to everyone who showed up here to support what we're about to present. I would like to welcome everybody today to this important event. The announcement that we're about to make is a major accomplishment in what is a 41-year mystery for the town of Bethlehem. You will hear the work of members of the Bethlehem Police Department, how we worked together over several decades to bring us to this point today. Cold cases are unique, and while sometimes they appear to be forgotten about, they're always been worked on, and we can find closure to all those that are involved, which I think is paramount to this. Today's presentation will be given by Commander Hornick, who has been the lead investigator on this case since we reopened it in 2013. I would personally like to thank the department members, the Detective Bureau, and everybody who's worked this case since 1981 to present. And without their excellent efforts, we would not be standing here today. So without further ado, I'd like to present Adam Hornick. Thank you.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'd like to thank everybody for coming today and echo the importance of this, not just for the community, but for the families and all those involved in this incident 41 years ago today, or 41 years ago. My name is Adam Hornick. I'm a commander of the Town of Bethlehem Police Department, and I've had the honor of working on this case since 2013, and I truly consider it an honor, like all of those people standing with us today do as well. Today's announcement is both symbolic and historical in many ways. On April 3rd, 1981, the Bethlehem Police Department responded to the Vadney Farm in Delmar for a reported discovery of markedly decomposed human remains, which were found at the edge of a farmer's field adjacent to the property of this very park that we're giving this announcement at today. That identification, though that body was found with no identification and has been listed as John Doe since that date. Recently, the Bethlehem Police Department, with the assistance of the FBI and numerous other agencies, has utilized modern science in making an identification to this individual. This case is the first case in the Capital Region and the first in Albany County history that's being solved with the use of investigative genetic genealogy. I would like to take a few minutes to describe how we got to where we are today with this case. The timeline here illustrates some of the steps which were taken in this investigation. On April 3rd, 1981, the Bethlehem Police responded and conducted an intense investigation, including an autopsy and subsequent use of a forensic odontologist to compare the remains of the dental charts. After many years of following up on leads and information, as well as resubmitting fingerprints, no identity was ever able to be made on the person that passed away and was found on April 3rd. The New York State Police continued to assist through the years in efforts to identify this person. In early 1990s, the case file was lost in a flood in the town of Bethlehem Town Hall Police Station. In 2013, our agency decided to reopen this case and work to rebuild the case file, starting with only literally 2 sheets of paper. This is the case file today, after all the work that's been done by our team in the last 8 years. Through rebuilding the case file, we called on resources of many agencies and entities in and around the Capital Region. After a few years of investigation, our agency was able to locate the jawbones of the decedent through the assistance of the office of Dr. Alan Roselle, which is now Dr. Colin Morton in Ballston Lake, New York, in Saratoga County. These bones had previously been out of police custody for over 36 years. Dr. Roselle examined these bones in early 1981 to assist the police department in trying to determine the identity. And it was those documents that were key when these bones were relocated in 2017. When these bones were relocated, the Bethlehem Police Department requested the assistance of the New York State Police forensic odontologist, who was able to come and examine the bones and complete a dental chart that was an exact match to that of the body found in 1981, proving that the bones we found 36 years later were that of the decedent. With that information, we were able to submit the bones to the New York State Police Forensic Identification Center, as well as the New York City Office of the Chief Medical Examiner and the University of North Texas Center for Human Identification. We were successful in developing a DNA profile and uploading this profile to state and national databases. Shortly after this, with the approval of the Albany County District Attorney's Office, we submitted the DNA profile for a familial DNA search in the state database. We learned that the request was rejected by the state, as the unidentified human remains policy did not allow for submission of evidence to identify victims, but only for evidence that had been left behind at a scene. Bethlehem Police was determined and did not give up. In 2019, we did a huge media push, which was a truly amazing coverage by many, if not all, of the media outlets that stand here today and continue to assist us in this investigation. We thank you immensely for that assistance. With everyone's efforts, the state's familial DNA search laws were changed as a result of this case. But we were still unable to submit our case to gain any leads to determine the identity of John Doe. We transferred the DNA samples in this case to the FBI office in Melville, New York, Investigative Genetic Genealogy Unit. Their fantastic team partnered with Othram and did an excellent job of developing a profile and potential leads in this case. Once FBI Melville and Othram narrowed the scope of the genealogy, it provided a lead for us to continue our investigation. It was through this lead that we were able to locate two surviving relatives outside the state of New York and determine a potential name for the identity of our John Doe. Through this lead and interviews, we were able to interview an aunt and a paternal first cousin who had actually never even met John Doe. Both of these relatives agreed to provide DNA samples for comparison to the DNA profile of our John Doe. The Bethlehem Police continued our investigation with the assistance of the U.S. Social Security Administration Office of the Inspector General and the FBI Melville Office of Investigative Genetic Genealogy Unit, as well as several other entities. This investigation showed that the identity of the lead produced by the investigative genetic genealogy and showed that this person basically had not existed since 1980, further verifying it to be the identity of our John Doe. The DNA of the aunt and the cousin were sent to the New York State Police Forensic Identification Center. And based on all of this, we can prove, based on all testimony and physical evidence today, that the confirmed two DNA samples that the body found on April 3rd, 1981, buried in Graceland Cemetery several days later, is no longer John Doe, but is in fact Franklin Feldman. Feldman was originally born in the state of Massachusetts and lived in New York for several years. At the time of his death, he would have been 41 years old. Feldman had never been reported missing, as he was known to have a transient lifestyle and included being homeless from time to time for several years, and not staying in contact with his family was not abnormal. We can show him in upstate New York through our investigation in the late 1970s with the limited records that exist for that time period. We've submitted all documents to the New York State Department of Health to change the death certificate to reflect the identity of Franklin Feldman. The cause of death will most likely officially never be known. However, at this time, we are unable to find anything that is consistent with obvious foul play in this case. To reiterate, this is the first case in Albany County and Capital Region history to use investigative genetic genealogy. On behalf of the Bethlehem Police Department, we would like to thank the members of the FBI Melville Office of Investigative Genetic Genealogy Unit, Othram, the New York State Police Forensic Identification Center, the New York State Police Forensic Support Services, McLaughlin, who has produced this chart and timeline to my left, the American Association of Cold Case Investigators, the Dentist Office of Dr. Alan Roselle, now the offices of Dr. Colin Morton, who helped locate those bones 36 years later, the Albany County Coroner's Office, the New York City Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, University of North Texas Center for Human Identification, the U.S. Social Security Administration Office of the Inspector General, Division of Criminal Justice Services of the State of New York, the Albany County District Attorney's Office, NAMUS, as well as the media for the publication attention given to this case and our relentless pursuit of closure to be a voice for the voiceless in this case, and for all those who helped bring a closure to this 41-plus-year mystery in the town of Bethlehem. If there's any questions, we'll be willing to entertain those at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Hornick, what inspired you to reopen this in 2013?
At that time, our agency had to do simple validation records, which are a regular requirement for agencies that are NCIC compliant. And in doing that, the administrative sergeant brought those 2 sheets of paper to us. And at the time, it wasn't something that anyone in our detective office was familiar with the case due to the retirements of the people that worked on the case. So at that time, we began the pursuit of rebuilding the case and started investigating it.
Commander, can you talk about the historic nature of this case?
So basically, the use of investigative genetic genealogy is something that is being seen starting to emerge across the country. Most people can compare it to the use of the Golden State Killer. It's the same technology that was used from that, and that's the technology where it does not tell us the identity of the individual, produces a lead. And from that lead, it's our job to conduct the investigation as well as get comparison of family members and other personnel. And in this case, when we did the media push a couple years ago, we made reference to the fact that if the case isn't solved in the next few years, the likelihood of it being solved is low. And we can stand here today and say that that's definitively true. With the 2 surviving relatives, we were able to locate in the fact that one had never met him and the other being in their late 80s. Unfortunately, most likely won't be with us longer either. And then getting their DNA to compare it and make that official confirmation, we were working on a limited timeline. So the fact that we're using this technology, the technology has been adopted and approved by all agencies that are involved in this, and the agencies we listed at the end is really what makes this a historic event and bringing this technology to the capital region. Our agency is very proud to be part of the push that was assisted by the media to change the familial DNA laws in New York State. And with those changes, it will now open up numerous opportunities for other law enforcement agencies to bring closure to families that have gone through this situation as well.
What does it say to you about never giving up and providing closure to families by pushing and pushing?
It's difficult. There is always hope. We like to say that, and like the chief of the town supervisor started with, sometimes cold cases could be seen as they're forgotten about. They're not. There's always people that are interested in them and detectives that are working on them and spending a lot of time and dedication working on these cases. So we offer that hope, and we offer to continue doing that in our department as well as in other law enforcement agencies.
Commander, can you speak to the impact that this case has had on the town over the years and how folks have kind of reacted to this as it's kind of snaked through the system?
So this has been kind of one of the longest mysteries in the town that we're aware of, and something that happened very early on in many of our lives that you're even standing here today, and something that, like I said, in 2013 when the paperwork came out, a lot of people in our office, including myself, weren't even aware had happened. And then at that point, we decided it was our job to revive this case and bring it back out. It received a lot of attention. People have been very interested in it. As you see here today, we have members of the public, other people that are involved in this case, have an interest in this, and the community has an interest in it. Even the people skating here today, playing hockey, when they were stopping by, showed up and said this was the talk of the town at a local business this morning and wanted to look at the chart. So it's something that, one, fascinates the community, but two, the community and the families and everybody involved in it is passionate about and concerned about, as well as seeing the developments in technology that we have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commander, what were you able to glean from the family about, any details about Franklin as he was as a person?
So what the family basically provided was, as soon as we contacted them, the family provided that they hadn't seen him in several decades. And that worked into the lead that we had. As we didn't know who the person was, we knew it was a relation to one of several people. The family basically provided that he had not had contact with anyone in the family in a long time, being several decades. Even in the 70s, he was living in unknown locations in New York State, and they would have only periodic contact with him. And that he did suffer from some mental concerns and was in and out of hospitals at the time, and was also homeless for several times. When the body was found, he did have lots of paperwork on him that had local phone numbers and businesses that we were wondering at the time and during the reinvestigation Those were addresses to places that provided comfort and support for homeless people, or soup kitchens, and provided food and everything for them. So those puzzle pieces started adding up once we were able to put a name with it.
What kind of thoughts are going through your head right now as you come to a close with this?
Not really sure. I guess I'd say mixed emotions, in that this is historic. I'm glad to be part of this team that was able to get this case solved, not only for the family but for the community.
Because of the use of the technology in this case, do you think that this is going to offer hope to other people who are wondering about a cold case or a missing person?
I think it does, and at the same time, in offering that hope, every time people that are missing a loved one hear about a case like this and hear it publicized yesterday, they start wondering if it's their loved one. So as much as it brings up that hope and brings it up, unfortunately sometimes it always stokes fears or concerns about bringing that closure, because that closure means that their loved one is deceased. So there's kind of a little mixed bag as it relates to that. But it definitely does give hope in the fact that New York State has made those changes that will affect so many people in the years to come. Really brings a lot of hope to those families, I would say.
We talked when we did the story with you about how much time and determination it took to get you to this point. Certainly, we talked about the state laws changing. At this point, I know there was frustration in the past about the state not necessarily being able to help along. There were a lot of hurdles in the way. Do you feel those have been cleared now, or is it still a lot of work to get something like this to happen?
A lot of those hurdles were cleared through the publicity of this case. At the same time, there are still some in that once those hurdles were cleared of being able to use familial DNA for John Doe's, this case still didn't fit the circumstances to be able to be submitted. So we would hope that additional changes come to make it easier for solving these cases, because like we said, this really is about the victims and the survivors of these incidents.
Can you expand on how the laws have been changed as a result of this case and how that will help in future investigations?
Absolutely. So originally, the laws of New York State did not allow for the search of familial DNA just for the purpose of identifying the identity of who a John or Jane Doe was. With the changes to those laws, a sample like this can be submitted just for the purpose of determining the identity of a victim or deceased person. And just determining the identity is key in then determining how the person died based on what evidence or lack of evidence existed. If this case had led to the identity being somebody else that had a different type of background, it could have opened up other avenues. But a lot of times in death investigations, determining obviously who the victim is lays a lot of foundation for the circumstances and what could have taken place.
Commander, this case set a precedent for, I'm sure, there's a number of different other cases that have been waiting with great interest to see how this would come to a close. Do you know how many, any in particular cases that have been waiting for the result of this?
I'm not really sure. I do know that there are a lot of local agencies that we've been talking to that have expressed an interest in this, and with the changes made to the state and Department of Health guidelines that have started exploring DNA. The use of genetic genealogy has been out for several years, as we know, but is awfully extremely costly. And especially for a municipal agency like us, it's even more costly, which is something that's very difficult to tell all those involved that we can't solve your case because we can't afford to. So finding ways to keep working around that box and outside the box is really what's important.
Commander, will there be a marker placed on Mr. Baldwin's grave that who would be best at providing that marker?
We're working with that. We've been in contact with the cemetery, and we're trying to discuss options for how that's going to be done with the family as well. Any other questions?
Was the family members receptive, or did you have to ask a couple times for them to fully understand?
No, the family was very receptive, and as soon as we reached out to them, and it's kind of a weird phone call to get. I can only imagine getting a phone call, hey, we're the police, we're the government doing this big cold case investigation, and your DNA is somehow related to this person. And the family was very receptive in that right away they volunteered Franklin's name and said, look, we have a family member that's been missing that time, and it could be him. And both of them gave their DNA, and when they give that DNA, it's only used for comparison in this case. It's not used for anything else. So they were very receptive and appreciative of it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Excellent. Anything else? Thank you, everybody. Oh, sorry.
How does it feel to have Franklin be finally put to rest, I guess?
I think it really just solving the mystery of it and having our team being able to have this historic and significance to it really brings a sense of why we do our job every day. You know, and what this job is really about in serving the community, even if it's from a time when no one standing here worked for this department. And that, you know, peripherally, it's what we do as police officers every day. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you coming, and have a great day.
Just to let everybody know, I'll send a release with like the names of all the agencies and stuff that were involved.
Hey, Commander, can we talk to you one-on-one?
Did he ever indicate where he was from originally? I didn't hear him say that.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, that's what I'm